After years of tolerating my stepmother's toxicity, she crossed an unforgivable line. I finally took action and cut her out of my life for good, refusing to let her hurt my family any longer. For years, I watched my dad blindly enable his wife, my entitled toxic stepmother, until I finally snapped and went no contact. After she crossed an unforgivable line, she physically attacked my child during an argument about our wedding. I tried posting about it on another Reddit account a few days ago, but with the trigger warning and all, it didn't go through. I get it honestly. This story's ugly. Still, I've come to terms with what my wife and I did and why we were right to do it. So, this will be my last attempt to put it all out there. I've revised the wording a bit, but every name you see here is fake. I'm a 28-year-old man. My stepmother, 49, likes to call herself a party planner, though no one ever actually asks her to plan anything. Still, ever since she married my dad, she's taken it upon herself to organize every holiday and family event. Growing up, I hated them. She's bossy, overbearing, and flies off the handle if anyone dares criticize her plans. But I kept showing up for my dad's sake. He insisted that participating helped her feel included. Now I'm engaged to Jane, she's 26, and we're getting married this July. We got engaged back in early 2021, but a few months later, Jane got pregnant. We agreed to delay the wedding and focus on raising our son. So yeah, we've been engaged for a while. From the very beginning, my stepmother has tried to wrestle control of our wedding from us. She's complained non-stop, contacted our planner behind our backs, and even crashed Jane's dress appointments. We've repeatedly told her to stop, but she keeps pushing. My dad thinks we should humor her, but it's clear she resents not being the host or being named mother of the groom on the invitations. Besides our son, we're also raising Luke, Jane's 4-year-old half-brother. Jane got custody of him shortly after we started dating after his parents passed away. During the pandemic, I moved in with Jane and Luke, and I've been helping raise him ever since. He doesn't call me dad, instead we're sister and OP, but in our hearts, he's our son too. Of course, my stepmother can't stand Luke. She's convinced Jane baby-trapped her way into our family. That accusation only got more intense after our biological son was born. My dad adores both kids and gets along great with Jane, but my stepmother constantly pressures him not to babysit Luke. We usually rely on Jane's brother and sister-in-law to watch the kids instead, since their children are close in age. Last Sunday, we had an event to attend, and Jane's brother was out of town with his family. Her other siblings live in different cities, as do my mom and sister. My dad agreed to babysit at our house, and we left the kids in his care. When we came home, we walked into chaos. Both kids sobbing, my stepmother screaming, and my dad feebly trying to manage the situation. Apparently, Luke had told her that both he and our son were going to be ring bearers in the wedding. She lost it. According to her, he's not family, and she wouldn't allow that. When Luke started crying, she escalated to physical violence enough that I now have to include a trigger warning. His lip is still split. She had never gone that far before. We immediately banned her from our home and from our wedding. My dad exploded. He declared that he wouldn't attend the wedding without her and started spreading a watered-down version of what happened to the rest of the family, convincing them to boycott our wedding as well. Even my stepbrother sided with her, despite me telling him exactly what happened. Jane and I are standing firm. Most of her family is backing us up, though. One of her aunts suggested my stepmother might just be acting out because she feels excluded by my side of the family. I've honestly had it with the excuses. I love my dad and I want him at the wedding, but not at the cost of my family's safety. I think I accidentally left this part out earlier, but yes, we pressed charges. The very next day, we took Luke to the pediatrician and made sure to gather every shred of evidence we had. In addition to clear photos of his injured face by some twist of fate, our nanny cam had picked up enough of the chaos to back our case. The actual moment she hit him wasn't on camera, but you could hear her screaming and Luke crying both before and after the assault. That alone painted a pretty grim picture. For the record, my stepmother wasn't even invited over that day, but since my dad rarely goes anywhere without her, we took precautions. Still, we never expected she'd actually do something this vile. We never trusted her around the kids, but this was something else entirely. She's now facing a child abuse charge. We made sure she wouldn't just walk away from this as if nothing had happened. Just to ease some concerns, Luke is okay. The pediatrician checked him out the morning after the incident. Jane had already put him in counseling because she was worried about how losing her father and stepmother so young might affect him, so we had that support system in place. After what happened, we gave Luke extra attention, more hugs, more reassurance. He was still shaken, of course, but he started bouncing back pretty quickly. As for us, we cut contact with my dad and stepmother completely. I want to thank everyone who took the time to read or comment on my original post. This week has been hell, but it's helped to know people care. I couldn't reply to everyone, but I tried to read as many responses as possible. For now, just know this: Jane and I are going fully no contact with my dad and his wife. We haven't spoken to either of them since the day it happened, and I don't plan to be the one to break the silence. Any communication that absolutely needs to happen is going through my younger sister. She's fully on our side, but still keeps a low level of contact with them, for now. Jane's taught me something valuable over the years: forgive only what someone is genuinely sorry for, and never forget the damage done. So if my dad or stepmother ever truly recognize what they did wrong and sincerely apologize, we might forgive them begrudgingly. But that doesn't mean we'll ever trust them again. Not with Luke, not with our son, not with any future children we may have. They've lost that privilege for good. Some people online suggested we post photos of Luke's injuries and the nanny cam footage to prove what happened, but honestly, I'm not that kind of person. I'm barely active on social media as it is. Even if I were, I wouldn't feel right about exposing an injured preschooler to the internet, especially knowing how nothing online ever really disappears. I haven't even shown those photos to most of my family, only if it becomes absolutely necessary. Speaking of my family, while most of them love my dad, they've never really liked his wife. She's been married twice before. Her first marriage, the one that gave her my stepbrother, ended after she cheated with my dad. Yep. My family actually liked her ex's girlfriend more than they liked her even back then. From the start, they saw her as manipulative and power-hungry. She's always tried to force herself into the family matriarch role, and planning every family event was her favorite way to stay in control and soak up attention. That's why I hated those parties growing up. She made every event, Christmas, birthdays, anything revolve around her. Most of my extended family didn't care enough to protest, but they never truly accepted her either. But Luke was different. When my relatives finally met him, once COVID restrictions relaxed, he was already 2 years old. He's sweet, clever, and easy to love. There weren't many young kids in the family, so everyone doted on him right away. I think that's when my stepmother really started to resent Jane and Luke because, unlike her, they were instantly welcomed. And it stung even more that she had no role in our wedding. Not only was she not the planner, she wasn't involved at all. She tried to wedge herself in, of course, asking to officiate the ceremony, even though we'd already asked one of Jane's best friends to do it. She pressured me to make my stepbrother the best man, even though I'd already asked my best friend. She wanted us to pick her niece Jane's cousin as the flower girl, even though we'd promised that spot to Jane's own niece. Her niece didn't even know us. She even tried to convince us to let my dad walk Jane down the aisle since her father had passed. But Jane had already asked her eldest brother, yes, the same one I mentioned earlier, to do it. Stepmonster was clearly disappointed that my side of the family wasn't more involved in the wedding. She kept saying this wouldn't happen if I were in charge. And maybe that was the problem all along, she wasn't in charge. But none of that excuses what she did to Luke. There is no justification, none, for what she did to Luke. Not jealousy, not feeling excluded, not even the twisted logic that Jane and I were unfair to her. A grown adult lashing out at a 4-year-old over a wedding roll. It's pathetic. And yet my father, the man I looked up to for most of my life, has been enabling that behavior for years. Since we stopped speaking to him, my sister has been the only one keeping us updated. She's been firm in her support for Jane and me, but she's still in low contact with our dad. Through her, I learned the version of events he and my stepmother are spreading to the rest of the family, a version that conveniently leaves out the child abuse charge and Luke's injury. According to their story, Jane and I uninvited them from the wedding simply because we were annoyed with my stepmother. No mention of the screaming, no mention of the slap, no mention of Luke's crying or his split lip. Nothing. It didn't take long to correct the narrative. When I explained the truth to the relatives, I actually care about yes with evidence in hand, they understood immediately. Several even apologized for assuming the worst about us. Some are now openly criticizing my dad and refusing to speak to him. But others, particularly people from my dad's generation, continue to defend him and his wife. Some of them didn't believe us at all. Others believed it happened, but said we overreacted. That was all I needed to know. We've let those people know they are no longer welcome in our lives. I'm not going to raise my kids around people who justify abuse just because the abuser is family. Stepbrother, he's in complete denial. No matter how many times we've tried to show him the truth, he refuses to believe his mother could be capable of such cruelty. I understand that in a way. I love my mom too. But love doesn't mean turning a blind eye to the truth. He's out of our lives now too. It sucks we were close growing up, but I don't regret the decision. Jane's family has been amazing through all this. They're furious about what happened, and they've gone out of their way to check in on us and make sure Luke is okay. Jane's extended family practically adopted him when she got custody. They treat him like their own, and honestly, I'm grateful every single day for that. One small silver lining, with all the guests we uninvited, we ended up saving a bit of money. So Jane and I decided to use it to fly in her cousin from overseas, someone who couldn't attend before because of cost. Now she'll be at the wedding, and it feels like a small win after weeks of tension. Luke thankfully is bouncing back. His lip is healing, it didn't need stitches, and he's starting to smile more again. A few days ago, we sat him down and explained that my dad and stepmother wouldn't be part of his life anymore. He took it better than I expected. He really did like my dad, but he understands they come as a package deal, and he's terrified of her now. We reassured him, told him he is family, and that no one can ever take that away. He's safe, he's loved, and we'll always fight for him. That's all he needs to hear right now. As for my wedding, I'm not too worried about my stepmother trying to crash it. With the restraining order in place and the venue staff fully briefed, she'd have to be incredibly stupid to try anything. But just in case, we provided them with photos and a very clear set of instructions. If she shows up, call the police immediately. Some folks pointed out the hypocrisy of her saying Luke isn't family, when her entire presence in our lives hinges on being accepted as family herself. I couldn't agree more. Her whole defense, every excuse my father's used to force her into our events, is that she doesn't feel welcome. He's guilt-tripped us with that line for years, but now it's crystal clear the only person she's ever really cared about being included is herself. Luke, on the other hand, is family. He's lived in our home, been raised alongside our son, and calls Jane his sister. I don't care what anyone says, he is ours. My stepmother calling him an outsider was the final straw for me, and my father's refusal to defend him. That was the moment I realized I couldn't protect my family and still have him in my life. I still love my dad. That hasn't changed. But I've accepted something I probably should have seen coming years ago. Being around him is no longer safe. Not for me, not for Jane, and especially not for our children. It breaks my heart knowing my son won't grow up with his biological grandfather, but thankfully he has two amazing step-grandfathers who love him dearly. That's more than enough. In the end, I'm sad, but also at peace. I'm not letting anyone, no matter how close they once were, threaten the family Jane and I are building. It's hard to admit, but deep down, I know my dad will probably never change. And honestly, that realization hurts more than the screaming or the betrayal. I wanted him at my wedding. I wanted my kids to know him, but what kind of example would I be if I let someone who enabled abuse stay in our lives? Since all of this blew up, Jane and I have been trying to move forward, focusing on the positives, like the wedding itself. We stuck to our date. Postponing wasn't an option. It was the only weekend that worked for most of our guests, and frankly, after everything we'd been through, we needed that day, that celebration. We also made a few safety upgrades. Every vendor we hired was told not to speak to anyone except me or Jane. We created passwords with all of them just in case anyone, especially my stepmother, tried to interfere. And yes, we had security. Even though I doubted she'd risk violating a court order, I didn't want to leave anything to chance. My friend said it best, any money spent on safety is money well spent. We gave the venue photos and detailed instructions. If she stepped within 500 feet, the police would be called, period. Thankfully, she didn't show up. In the months after we got the restraining order, things were mostly quiet. That silence was unsettling at first, but eventually it became comforting. Luke healed. Our son started talking more. And Jane held it all together better than I could have imagined. But the cracks were there even if she tried to hide them. She cried herself to sleep for nearly a week after the attack. That image still guts me. Seeing the strongest person I know break down like that, and knowing I let my father into our home, even when I suspected she'd tag along, left me drowning in guilt. I kept telling myself I didn't know she'd go that far, but that didn't help. The guilt was there, heavy, constant. Jane eventually convinced me to try therapy. I'd seen a psychiatrist once as a teenager, but nothing long-term. This felt different. It was different. Therapy helped me unpack things I didn't even realize I'd buried. Memories of my stepmother rifling through my stuff as a kid. Her passive-aggressive jabs at Jane, the way she always made herself the center of attention at every birthday, every holiday, every family event. She wasn't just toxic, she was calculated. She'd hijacked Jane's baby shower too. That story deserves its own post, honestly. But long story short, Jane's best friend and my sister planned a cozy pizza-themed shower. My stepmother tried to derail the whole thing with a mountain of pink decor and a binder full of tacky ideas. She wanted control. She always did. So when she realized we wouldn't hand her the wedding reins or the spotlight, she flipped. Even now, she plays the victim. She's convinced herself she's been wronged. And my dad, he's bought into every word of it, still tries to defend her, still thinks I'm being too harsh. A few days after we served the restraining order, he called me. The order didn't extend to him, so he was legally allowed to reach out. Jane and the kids were asleep, and against my better judgment, I picked up. He didn't apologize, he didn't ask how Luke was doing. He didn't even acknowledge what happened. Instead, he asked if the protection order was really necessary. I told him yes. Unequivocally, yes. I told him his wife would never come near my family again, that the damage was done, and I was thankful the court had formalized the boundary. He tried to justify her actions. She only hit him once, he said. Once, "That's supposed to make it okay," he said. "The kids need their grandma." "She's not their grandma," I replied. "My mom is. Jane is. Not her. She hurt my son. She disrespected my wife. And she did it in our home. I don't owe her respect. I don't owe her anything." He didn't take that well. He launched into a long-winded rant about how much she'd done for me and my sister, about how grateful we should be, about how much she loved us. So I pushed back. I listed every time she crossed the line, every time she lied or overstepped or played puppet master with our lives. I reminded him that she tried to hijack Jane's baby shower, pressured us about the wedding, tried to replace our officiant, our flower girl, even our best man. I reminded him how she treated Luke with open hostility from the moment she met him, and then I told him what I should have said years ago. "She means nothing to me." He fell back on the same tired excuse. "She doesn't feel included," so I said it plainly. You had a choice. You could have stood up for your grandchild, but you chose her instead. And that's all I need to know. Then I hung up. Later, my sister told me he called her right after. They argued. She ended up going no contact, too. She hasn't blocked him, but she doesn't take his calls anymore. She says she'll only talk to him when or if he wakes up and sees what he's done. I'm not holding my breath. Now that everything's out in the open, I've been thinking more about the things I never allowed myself to say, the little stories and red flags that built up over the years. My sister calls them Step Monster Chronicles, and honestly, there are plenty to pick from. But the one that still makes her shake her head and laugh is the baby shower fiasco. It started in June 2021 when Jane found out she was pregnant. We told immediate family that August. My stepmother's reaction, "Are you sure it's yours?" Even my dad looked disgusted when she said that. She didn't show any interest in the pregnancy. No texts, no offers to help, just silence. She was too busy gushing about my stepbrother and his fiancée, who were expecting to give her the grandchild she really wanted. Then that relationship imploded. The fiancée left him for her ex, and suddenly my stepmother's baby dreams were crushed. So what did she do? Redirect all that unspent grandma energy toward us. She went from distant to obsessive overnight. Started wearing promoted to Nana t-shirts, posting about us on Facebook, the works. Jane and I were too exhausted with work and baby prep to care much until she tried to take over our baby shower. Jane and I didn't want a big event. We were saving for both the baby and the wedding. We just wanted something low-key and co-ed since our due date was in February. We landed on early January and asked my sister Laura and Jane's best friend Nina to plan it. The idea, a cozy, fun, pizza-themed shower. Homemade pizza nights were already a tradition in our home with Luke, so it felt perfect. Nina found an event space with a pizza oven, Laura added baby-themed decorations, and it all came together beautifully. Make-your-own pizza stations, non-alcoholic drinks, and bodysuit decorating for the kids. It was adorable and budget-friendly. By mid-November, everything was basically ready. Then my stepmother caught wind of it. She pushed hard for a gender reveal party, which we declined. We didn't want one. We had also decided to wait until the birth to find out the baby's sex, no exceptions. Still, she kept asking, even demanded we find out as a Christmas gift to her. We refused again. Apparently, that's when she took matters into her own hands. Without our permission, she began working on her version of the baby shower. She got my dad to pressure Laura into letting her help. Laura and Nina met her for coffee out of politeness and were ambushed. My stepmother showed up with a huge binder labeled "Oh Baby," filled with tabs, color swatches, and party ideas. She was dead set on executing her personal dream baby shower. Laura took pictures. It looked like an explosion of pink frill and Instagram aesthetics. Giant teddy bears, glitter signs, gold balloons completely over the top and impractical. She even picked foods Jane couldn't eat, like soft cheeses. The theme screamed, Barbie vomited on Hello Kitty's birthday. When Laura and Nina gently reminded her we didn't know the baby's gender, yet she dismissed it. "Oh, it's a girl, I just know." Spoiler, it wasn't. She wanted a women-only child-free party with alcohol, fancy caterers, and a guest list made up mostly of her own friends, not including either of our moms. She had everything planned except asking what we wanted. Laura and Nina tried to salvage it, offering to incorporate a few of her ideas. But we'd already approved their pizza-themed plans and time was short. When my stepmother realized she wouldn't get her way, she called me demanding we reconsider. I told her what Laura and Nina did thanks, but no. I thought that would be the end of it. It wasn't. 2 days before the party, the venue called Nina. They said my stepmother had dropped off several large boxes labeled "A Little Surprise" and claimed she would arrive early to start setting up. She wanted to show up at 3:30 p.m. to prep 2.5 hours before the event. But the venue had strict rules, no access until 4 p.m. Worried, Laura checked the boxes the next morning. Sure enough, they were filled with her pink-themed decorations. Same signs, same plush bears, same plastic placemats. Her plan was clear: show up early, override our party, and force everyone to celebrate her vision instead. But Laura had a better idea. She lured my stepmother out of the venue by inviting her to a salon for a surprise girls' day using fake coupons as bait. Once she was gone, me, Jane, and Nina rushed in. We tore down every trace of her decorations and set up our own. It was chaotic, it was cathartic, and it was kind of fun. By the time guests arrived, the venue looked exactly as we wanted: pizza tables, bodysuit crafts, simple baby decor. When my stepmother finally showed up and saw what we'd done, her jaw dropped. Laura leaned in, smiled, and whispered, "Nice try." She sulked in a corner the whole night, even tried to sneak pink bows onto the cupcakes, but Nina stopped her cold. And honestly, that was the last time she really cared about our baby. She stopped wearing her Nana shirts, didn't visit us at the hospital, refused to even acknowledge our baby was a boy until weeks later. Whatever delusion she had of being a doting grandmother died the moment she lost control. Good, my son will never know her, and I couldn't be more relieved. 4 months after we got the restraining order, Jane and I finally got married. We'd been engaged for over 2 years, and after everything we'd been through, standing beside her at that altar felt like the most hard-earned, beautiful moment of my life. We're still getting used to calling each other husband and wife, but every time we do it feels a little more real. The wedding was incredible. The kids had an amazing time. Our extended families finally got to meet each other, and Jane and I danced so much I could barely feel my legs the next day. Luke took his ring bearer job, seriously held our son's hand, and walked him down the aisle with all the pride in the world. The only hiccup, my aunt got drunk and had to be wheeled out. But honestly, we expected something like that. Nothing major went wrong. And no, my stepmother didn't show up. The restraining order made that very clear. She was legally barred from coming anywhere near us or the venue. We even prepped the venue staff with her photo just in case. I never really believed she'd dare to show up, but I wasn't about to take that chance. Like I've said, better safe than sorry. One unexpected moment came a few hours after the ceremony. My dad called me. The restraining order didn't include him, so technically he could still reach out. Jane and the kids were asleep. Against my better judgment, I answered. I didn't expect a full apology, but I gave him one last chance. He started with some awkward small talk, then cut to the chase. He asked if the restraining order was really necessary. I told him flat out yes. It absolutely was. His wife would never be allowed near my wife or children again. He tried to downplay everything. She only hit him once, he said, as if that made it better. She's not their grandma, I told him. My mom is. Jane is. You need to respect that. He kept going, saying the kids need their grandma. I shut him down again. She'd physically harmed Luke. She'd screamed at him for calling himself part of our family. She disrespected Jane in our home. What part of that says loving grandmother to you? Then he started the guilt trip. He reminded me how much she'd done for me and my sister, how we owed her, how she was a godsend to the family. I pushed back. I listed everything she'd ever done that crossed a line, her lies, her manipulations, how she'd tried to hijack the baby shower, the wedding, our son's birth. And then I reminded him of the smaller things, the things that stick with you more than you realize. Like how she used to go through my and my sister's stuff when we were kids. That behavior didn't stop until my sister finally moved out 3 months ago. We're pretty sure that's how she found out about Jane's dress appointments. She read my sister's planner when she wasn't home. I told him everything, every memory, every line she crossed, every chance he had to stand up for us, and didn't. He tried one more time his old fallback. She just doesn't feel included. I was done playing along. You had the chance to protect your grandchild, I said. You chose her instead. That's all I need to know. Then I hung up. Later, my sister called me. Apparently, he phoned her right after. They had a huge fight about us, about the past, about how he'd let this woman poison so much of our lives. She ended the call in tears. She hasn't blocked him, but she no longer answers. Says she'll only respond if he ever really gets it. Honestly, I don't think he will. My sister and I are both starting to accept that. And while it hurts to give up on a parent at some point, self-preservation has to win. Even though things have been calm since the wedding, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't still unpacking everything. Therapy helped me see a lot, especially how I'd underestimated the emotional damage my stepmother caused over the years. Stuff I brushed off before her passive-aggressive digs, her obsession with control, the way she inserted herself into every family milestone, suddenly felt more insidious in hindsight. That included her attempt to hijack our baby shower. I mentioned it before, but I figured it's worth revisiting now since it paints such a clear picture of who she really is. From the moment she found out Jane was pregnant, she barely acknowledged it, until her son's fiancé dumped him. Then, deprived of the grandbaby she was banking on, she zeroed in on ours. At first, she tried to steamroll her way into the event planning. When that didn't work, she got sneakier, dropping off surprise boxes at the venue days before the party, filled with pink frilly decorations and gaudy signs. She knew exactly what she was doing. She planned to show up early and transform the space into her version of the party. But thanks to my sister Laura and Jane's best friend Nina, we beat her at her own game. While she was off at a fake salon appointment Laura had lured her into, we raced to the venue, tore down every piece of her decor, and replaced it with our own. When she showed up and saw it all undone, the look on her face was priceless. She spent the entire evening sulking, barely speaking to anyone. That was the last time she acted like she cared about our child. When our son was born, she didn't even visit the hospital. She ignored the fact that he was a boy for weeks. And, honestly, I'm grateful. I don't want her in my son's life. 4 months after the restraining order, the wedding came and went without incident. My stepmother stayed far away just as the court mandated. My dad didn't show either. After that last call, I knew we were done. I didn't even feel the urge to reach out. Still, there was one loose end, my stepbrother. Aside from exchanging quick birthday wishes, we hadn't spoken in months. I thought that was the end of it, until he called. Apparently, he and his mother had a falling out. She'd lied to him again this time about what happened with Luke. She claimed Luke had bullied our son and that Jane had twisted the story to make her look bad. But something must have snapped in him this time because he confronted her, pushed for answers, and for once, she admitted the truth. After that, he started talking to a therapist, talked to friends, began questioning the way she raised him, the way she'd controlled so much of his life. And for the first time, he admitted to himself that what she did to Luke wasn't a one-off or a misunderstanding, it was abuse. He told me he'd wanted to reach out in June but didn't want to interfere with the wedding. So months later, we met up for coffee, just the two of us. It was awkward. We were tense at first. But he apologized sincerely, and not just for doubting us, but for failing Luke when it mattered most. We agreed to take things slow. Over the next few months, we kept meeting coffee, lunch, small catch-ups. Jane eventually joined us. Even the kids saw him again 2 weeks ago. Things were rocky at first. Luke didn't know how to react, but it went better than I expected. He's still young, still healing, but he smiled. And that's a start. I won't pretend everything's fixed, but it's a step forward. Meanwhile, my dad seems to have given up trying to reach me. He still calls my sister occasionally, but she doesn't answer. Their last phone call, just days after she went, no contact, ended with shouting and painful memories being dragged to the surface. He defended my stepmother again, even as my sister laid out years of manipulation and emotional damage. She cried after, said she wished she'd walked away sooner. My dad eventually sent her 3 messages, one vague apology on my birthday, a rant after we ignored him on Father's Day, and silence since then. It's a strange thing letting go of a parent. It feels like mourning someone who's still alive. I still love him, but I can't be around him anymore. He had so many chances to put things right, and he chose not to. I've closed the door. I haven't locked it, but I'm not standing by with it wide open either. If he ever decides to take accountability, I might open it a crack. Maybe. That's Jane's hope, really not mine. She still believes in the possibility of change, even if she hasn't forgiven him. Especially not for what happened to Luke. Jane's always been fiercely protective of Luke. So when everything went down, the screaming, the injury, the betrayal, I braced myself for her to blame me. I mean, it was my dad who was supposed to be watching the kids. I had let him in, even knowing that he rarely goes anywhere without her. But instead of blaming me, she looked me dead in the eye and said, "You dumbass." It was the exact kind of thing I needed to hear. We've both been in therapy since then. I started a few months ago, mostly because Jane gently pushed me into it. It was long overdue. Turns out there was a lot more baggage than I realized, years of suppressed resentment, the guilt of trying to keep the peace while silently getting steamrolled, and the creeping awareness that my childhood wasn't nearly as peaceful as I used to claim. Jane's therapy helped her too. She's the kind of person who tries to carry everyone's emotions on her own shoulders. After the incident, she broke down. For days, she'd cry at night when she thought I was asleep. She felt like the entire family we'd worked so hard to build was under threat, like all our effort could crumble from one violent outburst and one man's refusal to choose us. Seeing her like that nearly broke me. Our 14-month-old son started saying new words, hi and bye, and Luke took it upon himself to teach him how to say his name. Watching that, the contrast between the joy in our home and the chaos we left behind made something really sink in. We made the right call. Jane's younger sister came back from college to spend a few days with us and celebrate her 21st birthday. Luke was over the moon and Jane was excited to get drunk with her sister. I didn't blame her one bit. It had been months since either of us had let go and just breathed. Still, despite the relative peace, I wasn't doing so great inside. I tried to keep it together for Jane and the kids, but the guilt crept in during quiet moments. That voice in the back of my mind whispered, "You let this happen." I knew it wasn't rational, but guilt rarely is. I tried to remind myself I couldn't have predicted my stepmother would cross such a horrific line, but I did know she was unpredictable. I did know she resented Luke. That knowledge is what made it so hard to forgive myself. Jane helped. She reminded me gently but firmly that we'd made a mistake, but we'd fixed it. We stood up. We pressed charges, we set boundaries, and we never once backed down, even when half my family turned against us. Some people reached out suggesting we forgive my father and stepmother, that we try to mend things, that maybe we were overreacting. One person even had the audacity to suggest we re-invite them to the wedding. Yeah, no. That door isn't just closed, it's sealed. My stepmother will never be part of our lives again. My father, at best, he's a maybe. But forgiveness without accountability isn't healing, it's erasure. And I refuse to pretend like Luke wasn't hurt, like our son wasn't endangered, like Jane wasn't disrespected in her own home. Despite the emotional weight, we decided not to postpone the wedding. Rescheduling wasn't realistic. The date we'd chosen was the only one that worked for most of our guests. So we moved forward, holding tight to the people who stood by us and cutting off the ones who didn't. My family played a smaller role in the wedding than Jane's, and honestly, that was fine by me. My sister was a bridesmaid. 2 of my cousins were groomsmen. My mom walked with the wedding party. That was more than enough. And Jane's family. They showed up for us in every way. Going through all of this together made me realize just how deeply I love her. She's not just my partner. She's the anchor that's kept me grounded when everything else felt like it was spinning out of control. She's strong, compassionate, smart, and endlessly loyal. I honestly don't know what I would have done without her. What we endured didn't tear us apart. If anything, it brought us closer. So, yeah, maybe life's messy. Maybe family can fail you. But standing beside Jane, seeing Luke giggle as he teaches his little brother how to wave, hearing my wife whisper we did it after our vows, those moments remind me that some families aren't given. Some are chosen. And ours is worth fighting for. After everything I thought I was done updating, the wedding happened, the restraining order held, life moved on. But then something unexpected happened. My stepbrother reached out again. He called me one afternoon saying he'd had a huge fight with our stepmother. Apparently, things finally hit a breaking point. She'd been twisting the story trying to convince him that Luke had bullied our baby and that Jane had made everything up. But this time, he didn't just accept it. He pushed her, demanded answers, and surprisingly, she caved. She admitted it, all of it. That's when he started seeing things differently. He began unpacking years of conditioning of being raised under her shadow. He told me he'd spoken to his therapist, to close friends, and he realized I wasn't exaggerating about what happened that day or what she'd done to all of us over the years. He said he wanted to meet, just the two of us. I agreed on one condition, no surprises, just honesty. We met for coffee. He apologized. He owned up to the way he dismissed us, ignored the signs, and refused to believe his own mother could be abusive. He didn't try to defend her. He didn't make excuses. He just showed up and told the truth. It meant more than I expected. Over the next few months, we rebuilt. Slowly. We'd grab lunch talk through the wreckage. Jane eventually joined. Luke, too. It was awkward at first, especially with the kids, but the tension eased. Forgiveness, like healing, isn't a straight line, but it is possible when someone truly tries. He's been reconnecting with my sister as well. In early November, he went no contact with our stepmother. Fully. That was the final line he refused to let her cross again. Now, here we are. Luke just turned 5 in September. Our younger son will be 2 in February. They're growing fast, laughing, learning, bickering like real siblings. Jane and I are taking them to Brazil this holiday season to visit her family. Meanwhile, my stepbrother will be staying with his girlfriend. Life feels good. That's not a word I use lightly. For a long time, I thought peace was something that only existed in other people's homes. But now, our home is filled with laughter, with messy art projects, with pizza nights, with midnight feedings, and sleepy I love yous. It's chaotic. It's imperfect. But it's ours. My dad hasn't tried to contact me again. I think he's finally accepted that I meant what I said. I'm still not sure if I'll ever reopen that door. I haven't locked it, but I also haven't touched the handle. Jane hasn't forgiven him, and honestly, I'm not sure she ever will. She's protective of our boys in a way that makes me love her even more, and I don't blame her one bit. You don't get to hurt a child and then earn your way back in with a few half-hearted apologies. That's not how healing works. That's not how family works. I've come to realize that family isn't about blood. It's about choice. It's about who shows up when everything falls apart. It's about who puts in the work to earn your trust, your forgiveness, your love. And the family we have now, the one Jane and I built together, it's stronger than anything my stepmother could ever try to tear down. To everyone who's followed this mess of a story from the beginning, thank you. Your words, your support, your outrage, it all mattered. It helped us stand tall when we were exhausted and reminded us we weren't crazy for drawing a line and refusing to let it be crossed again. This will be my last update. The storm has passed. The house held strong. And now the sun's finally coming through the windows. Happy holidays. And if you're going through something similar, don't be afraid to choose peace. Even if it means walking away from the people you thought would stand by you. Sometimes the only way to save your family is to build a better one.